What's up everybody, Greg here with Lensprotogo and Lens Rentals, and in today's video we're going to be doing another challenge for the Lensprotogo at Home Challenge Series. If you haven't seen the previous ones, definitely go and check that out. We did one last week on cloning, the week before was stop motion, and then our first week was the TV backdrop, and you guys had some awesome submissions, so definitely go and check those out after you finish watching this video. So recently I was scrolling through Instagram and came back across an account that I followed a while ago called Combo Photo. It's run by a photographer called Stephen McMenemy, and you might have seen some of his work. It's been pretty popular and shared around quite a bit, and I thought this would be a great challenge for us to try and do. And what it is basically taking two photos of objects that are completely unrelated and blending them together seamlessly with great composition and color. And they look so incredible, so I wanted to try it out, and I wanted to challenge you guys to do the same thing. So if you want some inspiration, watch this video, see how I do it, see some of the things that I'm doing, as well as go and check out that @Combo Photo on Instagram, because he has some amazing ones on there that can give you some really good ideas. Now, if you want to join in on the challenge, after you post your combo photo, make sure to tag it with #LensProtogoAtHome as well as @LensProtogo. And we're going to share some of them on our stories, as well as in next week's video. I'm going to react to some of my favorite ones here on the channel. So I have a ton of props on this table behind me. I was playing around a lot yesterday trying to figure out which one I wanted to do for this video. And I think the one I want to try and recreate from Steven's photos is one where he combines a group of grapes, I don't know what this is called, a bushel of grapes or something like that, as well as some balloons. So I have a couple different green balloons here. We're gonna see which one kind of matches best with the color of the grapes. And then I'm also gonna do one of my own ideas, which is taking a bowl of cereal. I'm gonna have a bowl of Fruit Loops, and we're gonna pour some Elmer's glue into it, making it look like it's the milk that's going into the bowl of cereal. So today I'm going to be shooting on the Sony a7 III with the 24-70 G Master lens. This is going to give me a really nice zoom range to get those tight shots of the smaller objects like the grapes, as well as the wider shots of the balloon when that's fully blown up. So to set the stage a little bit, I'm going to be shooting on this dark gray background, this kind of flat wall that I have. It's going to be a little bit different from what Steven did in his photo with the white wall, and I think there's going to be some really cool contrast with the green of the grapes and balloon, as well as this darker background. I also have a small light on the ground. This is just a flex 2x2 panel that I'm using to give me a nice gradient on this backdrop. And then for my key light, I'm going to be using a 2x2 panel, so a very similar thing to that, both set to tungsten so I can get that same nice white light. And this is going to be my key light for both the balloon and the grapes. Now, the one thing that I know I'm going to run into already is I don't have any helium for the balloons to actually make them float up. So I'm actually going to have to flip this whole thing upside down, which is going to be a whole project in itself. It would probably be easier just to get some helium, fill up those balloons, and then allow it to float up and then hold it and just shoot it in the same position. But this is what I have to work with, so this is what we're gonna do. So since we're in this sort of upright position, we're gonna start off with the grapes because the lighting's basically all set for this because it's kind of the same setup that I use for my talking head stuff. So the first thing that I need to do is find a good portion of the grapes that I think would be a good one to kind of blend with the balloons. You can see a couple on here got a little bit brown and starting to get mushy. So I'm gonna try and find like the best little section for this photo. And just kind of separate these out so I'm not having to work with so much. All right, so just taking like this small little section of that grape bundle and kind of moving around. I think this area right here, I don't know if you can see that, like this grape, I think is gonna be the one I wanna tie in with the balloon. So I'm gonna try and orient that one to be on the bottom where the balloon's gonna be coming up, and then I'll be shooting from like here down. So I think that's gonna be kind of my setup. And it's gonna be pretty easy, I think, to get this shot. All I'm gonna do is just hold up the grapes and then take the photo with my other hand because I can be pretty close to it. I don't have to back up far enough. So that's what I'm gonna do for this one. Let's shoot it. So looking back at a couple of those shots, they look like they're a little bit out of focus, which might be a little bit hard to see on here. But what I'm gonna do is stop down my aperture a little bit. So instead of shooting at a 2.8, which is wide open for this lens, I'm gonna go to like an f4, crank up my shutter a little bit to kind of get rid of the hand movement because I have two objects moving. I have the grapes moving as well as my hand holding the camera only with one hand. So hopefully that should help sharpen up the image a little bit, and then we'll get into flipping this whole thing around to shoot the balloon. So what I'm doing is just kind of rotating it around, taking a couple different shots from different angles, because the one that I want might not end up working at the end, depending on how the balloon lines up. So I'm just taking a couple extras, so when we get into post, I'll have some variety to work with. So now comes the difficult process of flipping this whole thing around. Luckily, the wall doesn't have any texture on it, so I don't have to worry about that. But I'm gonna have to mount this light up overhead, so putting it onto the ceiling here, and then I'm gonna have to take the light off my stand and put it on the ground to kind of reverse the lighting. So this light is coming from camera right, Now I need to make it come from camera left because it's going to be flipped over and then coming from camera right on that side. So it's a little bit confusing, but hopefully you'll kind of see what I'm doing as I'm doing it if you have this same issue and you need to solve it. First up, we're going to move that light up onto the top so we can get the gradient going in the opposite direction. Here. Now, yeah. Perfect. So that's actually quite a bit easier than I thought it would be. So here's kind of a good visualization of how it actually looks once we flip it over. So here is all of the things. We have our light down here on the bottom now, and we have the gradient. So if we flip it over, now we have the exact same setup where the light is over on the right and we have the gradient coming from the bottom going up. So that's a good representation of sort of how this whole thing works when I flip it around. All right, time to blow up the balloon. I have two different colors here. They're both green, but they're both a little bit different. This one's a little bit darker, so I have a feeling that this one is gonna work better. It's also a bigger balloon. It's 12 inches, I believe, and this is a 9-inch one. So I'm gonna try for this one first to see if it works. If it doesn't, we'll try the darker, smaller balloon. Ow. So that's looking pretty close. Those colors are not too far off. This one definitely seems to have a little more blue in it maybe, a little more yellow on the grapes, but that's something we can change in post when we go to the coloring, and I'll show you how we do that once we get there. So this one's gonna be a little bit harder to shoot by myself because I can't just reach out and take the photo because I have to be so far away because the balloon's so big. So what I'm gonna be using is the Sony remote app, and I have my camera set up on a tripod like you can see right here. And I'm just gonna be using this for framing as well as triggering the shutter. Now I've left all my camera settings exactly the same as the last photo. So once I flip this over, it should look almost identical to being upright, and it should look like the balloon is floating. So let's go ahead and get lined up. And probably right about there looks good. Let's go ahead and give this a shot. Sweet, so I think we got some really good photos of the balloon to tie in with the grapes. Now I don't want this video to get too long, so I'm actually gonna do the other one, which is the Fruit Loops with the Elmer's glue, over on my own channel. I'm gonna do another video, so I'll link to that in the description below if you wanna see the behind the scenes look at that. But right now, let's head up into the office and I'll show you how we actually combine both of these photos in post. So we're on the computer now. The first thing that we're gonna do is start lining these two shots up. Now I already went through all of my photos and picked two of them that I think are gonna work. So I have this first shot with me hanging the balloon. I really like this one because my arm was up, so it looked like the balloon was kind of pulling my arm up. And then I have another shot of the grapes where the grapes just looked really nice. I don't have to do too much retouching on them for like brown spots, as well as just being in a good orientation. So let's go ahead and pull in our first photo, which is the one of our arm. We'll just drag and drop right into Photoshop. I did shoot in RAW, so this is gonna bring up the RAW window for me to edit in, and I am gonna do a couple little tweaks in here. So it's looking fairly warm, so I'm gonna bring the temperature down a little bit, maybe to about 3600 Kelvin. That's looking pretty good. The next thing we're gonna do is change the tint because my arm is very magenta right now. So we're just gonna bring down the magenta shift to maybe about a 5. That's looking pretty good. I also wanna bring up the exposure because it is fairly dark. So let's bring that up about a stop. Full stop's looking pretty good. And then maybe bring up the shadows a little bit just to reduce the contrast, maybe about 20. I'm not gonna worry too much about doing like the texture and clarity and vibrance, saturation, colors, all that, because we're gonna be doing it in Photoshop and then in Lightroom afterwards. The last thing I wanna do in the photo RAW before we get it in here is actually rotate the image. So there you go, now it looks like the balloon is floating up instead of hanging down underneath me. So let's hit OK. That's gonna load it in, and then we can just go up here to the scale and we'll just scale it up to the size of our canvas. That's looking pretty good right there. Hit enter, and then we'll go and bring in our second image, which is of the grapes. And we're gonna match kind of those same camera raw settings. So we did at about 3600 Kelvin. We did at about a 5 stop, +5 magenta. Exposure we did at about a 1. That's actually looking a little bit bright. So let's dim it down. We have our shadows. We'll bring those up a little bit just to reduce the contrast, make it look a little nicer. 23 is looking pretty good. And then again, I won't touch any of the other things. So let's hit OK. That's gonna bring our second image in, and we're gonna do the exact same thing and kind of scale it up. Now to line these up, you obviously need to be able to see the image behind it as well. So if we go over to the opacity on the right, make sure that the grape layer is selected. We're gonna change that to 50%. That's gonna let us kind of see both of these images at the same time. and we can really line these two up. So this is the hero grape that we're gonna line up with the balloon. And you can see we obviously need to bring it up quite a bit bigger. And I'm also gonna rotate the image a little bit because I had it crooked while I was just shooting with one hand. So I'm just gonna straighten it out, make sure that that lighting is coming from the right direction, and then line those up. And then once you get it close, you can fine tune using the arrow keys just to go like left and right. So that's looking pretty solid. I'm kind of seeing right about where I'm gonna cut across. I wanna make sure that the balloon and the grape are touching at that point, which it looks like they are. So let's hit enter. We'll go up to this rectangular selection mask and we can just highlight over the top part of the photo or the part that we wanna keep, making sure to not cut any of these grapes off on the side. And then down on the bottom right, we can hit create mask. Turn that opacity layer back up to 100%. And you can see we're already getting really close with this setup. But you can obviously see the difference in the color. The balloon is very blue, where the grapes have a lot of green in them, green and yellow in there. So what we're gonna do is go in and start doing some color correction adjustments to match those and blend them a little bit better. So we're gonna select the balloon layer and start with that one. Go down to your adjustment layers and add a hue and saturation adjustment. And if you grab this little tool, you can select the color range, and that's gonna help us. It's gonna pick the yellows for us. And then we can go ahead and start dragging those and matching them. We're gonna kind of blend them in between because I do want the grapes to be a little more green and not as yellow as they are. And I also want the balloon to be a little more yellow and not as green. So we're just gonna kind of play around with this for a little bit until we get it looking good. That's looking pretty good for the balloon. So let's go ahead and go over to the grapes, and we're gonna add another adjustment layer and do hue and saturation. For this one, make sure that this little box is selected so that it's only adjusting the layer below it, which is the grape layer. We can do the same thing, grab that grape color, and this one, I wanna shift a little more green. And then just going back and forth and adjusting these until you get them blended together really well. Nice, I'm pretty happy with how that's looking right there. Last thing I'm gonna do is crop this image to get rid of all that extra space on the bottom image there, kind of get rid of all of that white area. And you can do it to your specific aspect ratio. If you're doing it for Instagram, you can do 4:5 or 16:9 for backdrops or whatever you have. So now that we've merged these two photos together, what I'm gonna do is bring it into Lightroom. You can do this in Photoshop. You can do all of your color correction and kind of make the look you want, but I really like Lightroom. I have presets in there that I can use, as well as just having a little more control and easier control over the colors and look of the photo. So I'm gonna go up to File, we'll do Save As, and save this as a TIFF. That's gonna save it in the kind of raw format that it's in. We'll just call this one, Grape Balloons is good. Hit OK. And then we can go over into Lightroom, go to Add New, Browse, and then find this shot. So Grape Balloons TIFF, open that one up, add photo. And now we can do all of the fun stuff with adding presets and doing our color adjustments just like we would with a normal photo. Boom, so there we have it. So this is the TIFF that we brought in, that's the original. And then this is it after we've put a little bit of a color grade or preset on it in Lightroom. Whew, that was so much fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you learned a little bit, and hope you got inspired to go out and try your own combo photo. Remember, if you want to join in on the challenge, make sure to tag us, hashtag LensProtoGo@home, as well as @LensProtoGo, and we're going to share some of our favorites on the Instagram stories as well as on the channel next week. If you guys want to check out those other videos, I'll throw a link to a playlist right up here, as well as at the end of the video. And if you enjoyed this, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for new videos every single week, and I'll see you in the next one.